What's going on, guys? This is Ryan with RK Outpost, and something came to my attention yesterday about a former Lucasfilm employee who very clearly has a story to tell about the fall of Star Wars, but is being silenced and not allowed to speak on it. Let's get into it right here. Now, I do have to give a lot of credit to Ichibaka. We're going to talk about a couple things, some that happened almost a year and a half ago, in regards to J.W. Rinsler. That is the former Lucasfilm employee. J.W. Rinsler is an author who had previously written making of Star Wars books, such as The Making of Star Wars, definitive story behind the original film. He also did Empire, he also did Return of the Jedi, a bunch of the making of blank of these Star Wars films. And he was there when Disney bought Lucasfilm in 2012. Originally, he was working on The Making of Star Wars, The Force Awakens. But that book got canceled and would never see the light of day because they did not want some of the things that he was putting in that book to get out there. So again, let's get into this. And we also have some clips. He recently appeared on a podcast. I want to let you guys hear his words and how he felt about some of the things going on at Lucasfilm after Disney took charge. He was also working on a making of book about The Force Awakens. He told Slash Film, so I had a journal and interviewed 20 people early on, just when they were starting the job before J.J. Abrams was even hired. I was there at the first meeting at Skywalker Ranch when J.J. came and officially started, and I was there until the movie was released. And then afterwards, I shouldn't say too much, but I interviewed people connected to the film. But Lucasfilm would cancel the films, and Birth Movie's Death reported J.W. Rinsler wrote indispensable books about the making of the original Star Wars trilogy, real warts and all look at the making of the saga and the people behind it. He also wrote one for Star Wars The Force Awakens, but you shouldn't go looking for it at your local bookstore. His Force Awakens book has been indefinitely delayed, perhaps canceled, and it was indeed canceled. Yes, I'm asked this often, but the book was canceled. You'll have to ask Lucasfilm / Disney / publisher why, says J.W. Rinsler. Again, so what was in this book? What did they not want J.W. Rinsler talking about? When you hear real warts and all, it talks about a lot of the struggles, and we all know that. All the struggles that George Lucas went through to create the original Star Wars movie. We know that it basically almost didn't happen several times. We almost didn't get this incredible universe that we ended up having. But I think that that's why those making of books are so incredible. It tells you all the trials and tribulations that he had to go through to get it made. Why was the book canceled? This is what J.W. Rinsler says. There was no chance the book was going to be published. He joined Lucasfilm in October 1st, 2001, midway through production of Attack of the Clones. I knew when I started writing it would be canceled. There were a lot of things that were known to the public that I think Disney and Kathleen Kennedy just didn't want to rehash. This is just speculation, but even stuff like changing the date of release, that Brad Bird was approached first, that Harrison Ford was almost killed, they were not comfortable with the book rehashing those issues. But the real kicker was not this book. It was a blog that he was doing, just talking about his time. Getting back to J.W. Rinsler, apparently he was working on a blog that was shut down by Lucasfilm. Also worth noting, Rinsler was working on an unauthorized blog titled The Rise and Fall of Star Wars that was eventually shut down by Lucasfilm after 12 posts. Rinsler's blog was likely going to cover the period the company was sold to Disney and possibly the early discussions surrounding Episode 7. A ton of this is here. I would highly recommend going to Ichibaka's website. I'll put a link in the description and checking out because he says some really interesting things. He doesn't get into the Disney stuff yet. They shut him down before he could get into that, but there's a ton of great things in there. However, the reason this is getting brought up now is because back in 2019, Ichibaka said any chance of seeing the rise and fall of Star Wars completed the blog where he was going to talk about the fall of Star Wars under Disney. This is what he says. In October, one day later, he says, not in the near future or medium future, but thanks for asking. Again, this is in 2019. Then, for no reason whatsoever, yesterday, J.W. Rinsler replies again. It is more or less complete. Needs a rewrite / expansion. NDA aspect can be worked out, but no publisher will touch it. Ichibaka then asked, would Indiegogo be a possibility? I've been advised against self-publishing, but thanks for asking. What does all of this mean, right? What does all of this mean? What don't they want to get out there? Well, I wanted to let you guys listen a little bit to J.W. Rinsler. He's asked several things in this interview with, it's called Force Material is the podcast. They interviewed him for about 45 minutes. At around the 45-minute mark, they start getting into the purchase by Disney. I have a couple of clips that I want you guys to listen to. So here we go.
And hard as it may seem to believe, there were people who complained about working at Lucasfilm, which I could never understand. No company is perfect.
Yeah.
Now, this is when he was asked about the reaction, right? The reaction of people at Lucasfilm when Disney was being bought.
Every company...
Or when they were being bought by Disney.
And there's always people at companies who are not doing the most greatest job, but Lucasfilm on the whole was really a fantastic place to work. So I think some people who've been complaining about it suddenly realized it was going away, suddenly changed their tune. But then I think I was kind of cautiously optimistic. I thought Disney was going, could be a really interesting place to work. And I thought maybe I could work on other projects besides Star Wars. I thought I would love to write a book about Disney's live action movies, from the golden era. So I was cautiously optimistic, but it was basically, I felt very sad. We went to this big meeting, the whole company, and George was on the stage, and it was clearly the end of an era, the end of his, although he said he wanted to go do, 16.
And that's when he talks a little bit about how George wanted to get into independent stuff, but the kind of sad feeling from a lot of people at Lucasfilm knowing that was about to change. But I've got a couple more clips that I do want to play for you guys right here.
You've said, though, that you had a feeling when you were working on it that it wasn't going to be released. I mean, given...
Again, this is talking about his making of the Force Awakens book.
That you've just said, there wasn't anything particularly wild or shocking in there. I mean, why did you think that?
Just because it was a diametrically opposed attitude towards George's, which was George was basically happy. George figures and knows and also says all the time himself, making a movie is really difficult. Hard. And people's feelings get hurt, and accidents occur, and mistakes are made. And you do the best you can, and you make your movie. But Disney, you were talking about marketing, Disney sees all of that stuff making of is just should not blemish in any way the people who were making the movie. And it's just an extension of marketing and PR. And so their tolerance for that kind of stuff was about 99% less than
Right, so talking about the differences, these clear differences from Lucasfilm when George was running it, vice when it became ran by Disney. And like we talked about, the warts and all look, right, the problems that arose. Everybody heard about these things. Everybody knew Harrison Ford got hurt during the filming. Why would you not want that in the book? It's out there, it's public knowledge. But Disney's so controlling over the narrative, and we know the problems and the history of problems that Lucasfilm has had with these sequel trilogies, with Rogue One, with Solo. We know that Kathleen Kennedy has so many problems getting these things to run. So maybe that is a big reason why that never saw the light of day. Let's listen a little more, make sure I got all of this.
And so it's just a totally different corporate culture. That's why George was in Northern California, to escape Hollywood. And of course people will write in books to come, and maybe those books are already out there. I don't know, but I'm not reading everything. How ironic it is, and I'm sure he's completely aware of this, that the person who escaped Hollywood then sold his company to a Hollywood company.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's true. That's exactly what happened, unfortunately. Let's listen again. I have more.
And he says that he regrets not giving George more of a heads up about that before that meeting.
Now, this is talking about Bob Iger. So he's asked a little bit about Bob Iger's statement. It's about not being as transparent as he wanted to be with George, about not using his story treatments like they had kind of had the handshake agreement upon. And wanted to know what George's feelings were, how upset anybody was. This is J.W. Rinsler's answer, and listen closely, because he's trying to step around things.
I mean, do you recall the meeting that he's talking about? Do you remember what the atmosphere was like when George realized we're not doing my sequel trilogy?
I do, but I have to be very careful what I say, because as you probably know, I started a blog where I was going to talk about that. I figured my attitude was very naive. I thought, I'm doing this for free. I don't think the NDA covers this, but I was wrong. Obviously, the financial component had nothing to do with it, and some other people definitely interpreted the NDA a little bit more strictly than I would interpret it as. So, I'm not sure exactly what meeting he's talking about, but I'm fully aware of what the atmosphere was like. And I mean, I can say, one thing I think I can say, can I say this? I mean, I can't. I'm not going to say it because I just...
So you almost get a little bit of it, but he doesn't. But obviously, there is something very dramatic behind the scenes that happened when George Lucas and Lucasfilm was aware, like, what Bob Iger had done. And I want to hear that. Those are the kind of things we were going to hear about in that blog. One last clip for you guys.
I haven't seen episodes 8 or 9.
Wow. Okay.
I saw 7 and I saw Rogue One, and I thought, this is just too painful. I don't want to watch these movies anymore.
Painful in the sense that because you were so closely attached to Lucasfilm previously, or
yeah, painful in that because I know a lot of people like the films, and people get a lot out of them, and I'm not saying you shouldn't. If you're happy watching those movies, all the better. But I was not happy watching them because, to me, Star Wars was the expression of a single artist working with a lot of very creative people. It was all filtered through George. And I'm not saying he was perfect. All the movies have their people, pointed out their flaws from day one, and no movie is perfect. But they were the expression of George Lucas's spirit, shall we say. With a lot of people helping him, but he was the filter to saying yes, no, maybe you'll take that idea, not that idea, whatever. And afterwards, it's not that expression anymore. It's the expression of different people, and I'm not interested in those people as artists. That doesn't mean they couldn't do something eventually that's not Star Wars, or they could eventually do something that is Star Wars. It could be equally interesting, but from what I hear from my friends who see the movies, it doesn't sound like that would interest me. So clearly, it does interest a lot of other people to the tune of a lot of money, which is great because it keeps a lot of really talented and creative people employed.
Yeah.
And I think that is very interesting and telling, and I think there's a lot of us that feel the same way. For a lot of us, it wasn't The Last Jedi that turned us off from the sequel trilogy. It was the realization that this is not Star Wars, that Episode 7 was a hack job, right? It just was. J.J. Abrams did not do a good job. Lucasfilm did not do a good job. Disney did not do a good job with Force Awakens, regardless of the hype that was all built around it to push it to $2 billion. People that were close to Lucasfilm, like J.W. Rinsler, know. They realize that this is no longer Star Wars. And again, I would highly recommend, I'm going to put a link to this original article so you can see some of his blog where he talks about what it was like to work at Lucasfilm, how George kind of led through love, right? That was kind of how he was a leader at Lucasfilm. He talks a little about the Star Wars Expanded Universe really jump-starting Star Wars back in the 90s, which I think is incredible to read about and what so many of us do know. I highly recommend checking that out. I want to see him be able to finish this. Not sure why he replied like that yesterday to Ichibaka. I don't know. But it tells me maybe he's looking for a little attention. Hopefully this can get some attention on that and bring some awareness because it's not something that I had heard about before this. What do you guys think is going to be in the rise and fall of Star Wars when it eventually may see the light of day? What other stories did J.W. Winsler have to tell? I want to hear about them because we know of the garbage that has gone down at Disney, at Lucasfilm, how they have betrayed George Lucas, and I want to hear all about it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I will talk to you later. Thanks for watching, everyone, and a huge shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram? Check out the description below. You'll find links to my P.O. box and my Patreon as well. I'll talk to you guys later.